This is Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust that you'll consider this like your vitamin and supplement for your mind and heart today, and wherever you receive podcasts from. Would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, leave a rating and a brief written review? It will enable other excellent people just like you to be able to locate this podcast. Today, I want to speak to you about looking at the long view, and there are days in which the incremental change is what's going to change your life. There was a time in my life when I was in a hurry to get everything done. I was hard driving. I put all sorts of expectations upon myself. I would not let any grass grow under my feet, and all change and all things that needed to happen yesterday. A friend of mine about 1996 told me a story that I shared with a young man yesterday. I hadn't thought about the story in a long time, but talking about change, how fast, how slow. There are some things that just because of the situation you're in, it has to be changed right now. There is danger in waiting. And there are a lot of reasons for that. If the system that you're involved in is broken, or someone in your family is broken, or your financial situation is broken, or you're spiritually broken, you have to pretty much stop whatever you're doing, drop everything, and attend to the situation, attend to whatever it is that's wrong, and get it fixed. But as you know, I continually refer back to a couple of books, Jeff Olson's The Slight Edge and Darren Hardy's The Compound Effect. I don't know why I keep circulating back to them. Oftentimes I wish my younger self would have had those books available to him. It might have made a difference. For it talks about the incremental changes that done over time, or in essence with the lever of time, have all kinds of outsized results and outcomes, in that you can't always put big inputs in, but you can do consistent inputs even if they seem slight or that they hardly matter, and the compound effect will really move them. This story will probably make sense to you if you've ever been a part of the church world. The story was told to me that there was a pastor who came to a church, and the Saturday night before his first Sunday, he was walking through the building, and he walked through the sanctuary, and he saw that the piano was over on the right-hand side. Well, where he had been serving, he was used to the piano being right in the middle of the platform, literally right behind where he stood to preach. Therefore, either he or he could nod to a musician when it was time for the service to come to a conclusion, to get quickly and quietly up there right behind him and begin to play softly a song. So he thought, I'm just going to move that piano to where I would prefer it to be. He went over to the side of the platform where the piano was, kicked up the locks, the stops, and by himself rolled the piano to the middle of the platform, right behind where he would stand tomorrow morning and preach his first sermon. That one action of moving that piano from one end of the platform to the middle caused all sorts of consternation amongst the people. It got so out of hand that there was an emergency governing board meeting, at which time the pastor was severely reprimanded and asked why he would try something so radical. Well, it started his leadership off on the wrong foot, and a few months later, he left. Now, fast forward 2 years, and they were having an anniversary service at the church, and they had invited all of the former pastors to come and other special guests, and this person who had had a not very pleasant experience there was seated on the platform next to the present pastor. When they marched out onto the platform and took their seats, the former pastor could not believe his eyes. There in the middle of the platform was the same piano that 2 years before he had moved on a Saturday night and, in his opinion, had paid a terrible price for that change. During the singing, he leaned over and whispered in the present leader's ear, "How in the world did you get that piano moved to the center of the platform? It nearly cost me everything, and really it was the beginning of the end for me. How were you able to pull that off?" And after a thoughtful moment or two, the present pastor leaned over and whispered in the former pastor's ear, "I moved it 1 inch a week, and no one noticed until it was in the middle of the platform." I think that's the compound effect at work. Oftentimes, again, your organization and what you're involved with today needs a major kickstart, a major change, maybe even a major shock to the system. But that's not often the case. Think of some of the changes you are seeking to implement at work or wherever you are exercising leadership gifts. Maybe the better thing to do is to bring the people along with you slowly. I doubt there are many podcasts that are going to be talking today to leaders about incremental change. But when you change one thing, albeit seemingly a small and on the face of it even somewhat insignificant, here's what I've learned. You change just one thing and suddenly you can change everything. I want to talk to you about character for a moment in relation to what we're talking about. You don't get your character because you're successful. You build character because of the hardships you face. And unlike change and moving things, you can't cut corners and implement fits and starts when it comes to your character. You are either a woman or man of character or you are not. The greatest lessons I have learned in life have not been learned on mountaintops. They have not even been learned at the culmination of a successful project executed seemingly without flaw. The greatest lessons I've learned and the greatest tests to my character have come in the midst of hurts and disappointments and hardships and setbacks, to the point that I wondered, would I even ever make it? Would I get through? There are lessons to be learned. Now, I'm not talking about being a fearful leader, afraid of making a change, fear of riling up the wrong people. That's in no way. Do not hear me saying that. It just means I have to take action, and though to some the action that I'm taking at present seems small and somewhat inconsequential, but I guarantee you if it's moving in the right direction, it can indeed have an outsized impact. A lot of what I'm talking about is some of the change that needs to happen where you live today is within you. You hear me talk often about that on my morning routines when I'm the night before have laid out the 3 MIT, the most important tasks that I have before me the next day, that if all of my world falls apart that day, I at least want to make sure these 3 things have been done and attended to before I pillow my head the next evening. And what I have also discovered is I don't just put easy, mindless sorts of things that I can just go through the motions. I put things on there that are going to move me and the organization toward its goals. And one of the things that I do is I try to put one of those frog-like items on there. One of the things that if I don't hold myself accountable, it would be easy to procrastinate and to put off and to look for a better time of thinking about it. So I put the frog first, because if you have to eat a frog, go ahead and eat it. It's not going to get any prettier the longer you look at it. And then let's say on your 3 or 5, whatever you would determine are the most important tasks that you need to get done in a given day. I've also learned if 2 of the 3 are ugly frogs, are big ugly frogs, then my default on that is eat the ugliest one first. Whatever is the most challenging, the most difficult, the one that causes you the most angst, that has pretty well determined the one you must look at, do, take action. One of the incremental things that you can do that will move you forward is just get up, take action immediately. Don't wait for the sun to come up. Don't wait for a better and more opportune time. It is right now. One of the other things that I would say to you that will incrementally make a difference, if you're a person in faith, feed your faith through reading the Word, devotional, prayer, meditation, those sorts of things. You got to take that action immediately and then develop a positive attribute that you're going to work on. I have been doing the morning and evening task. I have been preparing for the next day, the night before, for so long. It's almost to me like brushing my teeth. When I get ready to go to bed, I immediately start getting myself ready for the next day. I don't have to take myself by the collar and force myself to do so. It's just naturally now what I am going to do. So to me, getting the things ready for the next day, though packing my bag, getting my clothes out, sitting down, looking over my calendar, my list of what are those things. And oftentimes I have to really go through it and search out to say, what is the most impactful thing that I need to do that really needs to transpire tomorrow? And oftentimes I'm scratching some off because though it's important, it's not one of the top 3. Let's put it somewhere else further down the list. It takes me, sometimes it's easy because they just are self-appointed. They raise their head and they are the ones that absolutely positively have to be attended to the next day. Sometimes it takes me a little more thought, kind of processing what really does need to happen. And then it becomes a positive attitude. The other thing I've learned, and also out of the story that I opened this podcast with, regardless of all of the productivity hacks, all of the kind of so-called shortcuts that you and I can take, there really are not very many shortcuts. You have to do the time. You have to put in the time. You have to put in the effort. You have to sow the proper seeds. You have to feed your own soul, your mind, your heart. You have to tend to the relationships of your family and friends as well as your organization. What I'd like you to do at this portion of the podcast is think of some big thing that you've been trying to move. You have been trying to make progress. You've been trying to get it done, and you feel like you've faced opposition. You feel like folks have done everything possible to discourage you. What is that? What would be the plan of action to move forward an inch a day? Just moving it, just doing something, just taking positive action. The reason most won't do that, or they do it for a very short period of time, is it becomes discouraging. If something's only moving an inch every so often, it doesn't seem that anything is happening. It's very hard with the naked eye to say, oh, you are really making outstanding progress on that. It is apparent that something is happening. What will happen is when you do the slight edge, the compounding of your actions, the correct actions, is It's sort of like compound interest on money. It almost seems like magic. It's not magic, but it almost appears because nothing happens much, nothing is much changing, and then all of a sudden it almost appears exponentially. Things are happening. Don't give up. Don't get discouraged. Take a positive action today, regardless of how small and seemingly from the human perspective today inconsequential it seems. Enough of that kind of effort and action will lead to enormous results. Stick with it. You can do it. One step at a time. You've been listening to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom. Words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust that today this was like a vitamin or a supplement for your mind and heart. And wherever you receive podcasts from, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom? If you could go, especially to iTunes, and leave a rating and a brief written review, it will enable other excellent people just like you to be able to locate this podcast. My leadership friends, these are daunting days, but remember, regardless of how you feel right now, this is 100% true. You are doing better than you think you are. You really are. And until next time, this is Dr. Ron saying, have a great and blessed day.